All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here are doing our 2025 preview and prediction for the Kansas State Wildcats. We'll give this coaching staff. Chris Klieman enters his 7th season, 120-41 all-time record as a coach. Matt Wells, 2nd year in the role of offensive coordinator. Joe Klanderman, he's been in the role since 2020 of defensive coordinator. Respectable offseason for the Wildcats, 56th in the portal. Top 40 class in the high school ranks. And last year, they went 9-4, winning the Guaranteed Rate Bowl over Rutgers and Phoenix. Looking at the Kansas State offense, this is a group that was quite solid last year, but I think certainly let me down a little bit in terms of the expectations I had for them. That's just because I think I was being overly hyped on Avery Johnson. This is a guy that played very well, but certainly had some weaknesses to his game as well for a young quarterback. That's certainly expected. I like his pocket awareness, mainly him just being so calm and nimble with his feet. Has a nice high release. The ball really comes out on a line, real accurate in the intermediate range. Good balance as a runner, really makes some good reads. I love the speed he has as a runner as well. He tends to have throws sail on him, though. He needs to find more consistent accuracy and touch, and often lost his confidence leading the shaky play. I think the BYU game, Nick, was a good example. I remember, vividly watching that game, and this guy had zero confidence. They couldn't get anything going. They got blown out in that game. And he's been a good distributor of the ball, though. Runs the offense well. He needs to take his game to that next level, though, by being a field general from the pocket. Do you think Avery Johnson has that in his future, or do you think this is a quarterback who's maybe potentially already kind of hit his ceiling? Because he did have really good numbers last year, but again, that BYU game early on last year was very disappointing. He was much better the rest of the season. I expect him to continue to improve, though.
I really like Avery Johnson. If the fans in Manhattan are hoping to see this team go compete in a college football playoff spot or for a Big 12 title, obviously those two go hand in hand. A lot of it relies on whether or not Avery Johnson can play to his full potential. I think he's a very talented young man, 6'3", 190, and I think he really develop and progress in the offense. I saw a lot out of him last year that I liked. I also saw a lot that I didn't like. I'll start with the positives: 2,700 yards passing, 25 touchdowns, 605 on the ground for 5.4 yards per carry, and 7 scores. I thought those were solid numbers. The averages for him kind of stayed the same across the 2 seasons. He averaged 5.4 on the ground this year. 2023 averaged 5.7, had 7 touchdowns in both years. Also, his average yards per throw was 7.3 across both years. So he's a very consistent quarterback in that. Obviously, a much larger sample size in 2024 compared to 2023. The issue for me, the 2 biggest glaring issues, was a 58% comp rate, which I don't like at all. Sub 60 is concerning for me, as well as 10 interceptions. Was a bit, tried to force plays sometimes, made mistakes throwing the ball, throwing the tight windows. And some of those things are just not what you want to see in your young quarterback. You highlighted that BYU game where he just had no confidence. 2 interceptions in that one, 130 yards, no touchdowns, couldn't do anything on the ground in that one. A 53% comp rate, just very poor. You look at the game against Arizona State. They were fighting in that game, but 2 picks in that one. They were really trying to battle. They threw the ball 40 times in there, which was the highest mark of the season for him, and that was a really opportunity for him to try and sling the ball. Also at Houston, 59% comp rate, 2 picks in that one. Didn't do anything on the ground in that game, only 18 yards on 8 attempts. So definitely blows hot and cold sometimes. There were some bigger moments, obviously some games where he was really strong. The game against Arizona, 2 touchdowns passing, 110 yards on the ground, 156 through the air. I think Avery Johnson has a lot of potential left in him still. I think this is a kid I really rely on. I think it really start to develop and turn himself into one of the best quarterbacks in the conference. Can he find that full balance? Can he get that passing efficiency a little bit higher, above a 60% comp rate this year? Those will be the big keys for this offense.
And, of course, Johnson contributes significantly to this rushing attack that was one of the best in the country last year. That was certainly expected. But now they replaced a phenomenal runner in DJ Giddens, but they replaced him with Dylan Edwards. I think he's going to be a superstar for this team. A guy of great speed, can plant, hit the hole, burst quickly. Very effective pass catcher. Typically on rail, seam, or wheel routes, or he can be flared out as well. Smaller framed runner, though, at 5'9", 167 is likely not going to be a workhorse or have much of a goal line effect. Not even close to being a power runner. Joe Jackson, on the other hand, 6'2", 203, is most certainly going to have a big role after 40-plus touches across a couple of games last year. He's a redshirt sophomore. He's got plenty of tread on the tires. I really think he will have good production as well. We'll need him to fend off Gabe Ervin from Nebraska, who's 6'2", 220. It was expected to be good for them, but in 4 years was unable to sustain any traction. Got hurt after a good 3-game start in 2023. That's just about it for his career. Nice room here, though, Nick, because Edwards, he's not going to be able to... I think he can replace the production of Giddens, but his exact role is going to be different because Giddens is more of a power back. He's a bigger guy who can, win in those certain situations I mentioned. So Edwards is not going to be getting you 20 carries per game, but that's where the guys like Ervin and Jackson come in hands. So this is a very nice complementary backfield. I think it's going to do a lot of damage for the Wildcats.
Yeah, I love this backfield here. I think when you plug in Avery Johnson as well, that's a really nice add. I think overall this is a good backfield. I think Dylan Edwards could really take that next step forward and be a really strong back for this Kansas State team. 546 for him last year, 7.4 yards per carry, 5 touchdowns. He also had 133 yards receiving and 2 scores in that regard. So he's, a versatile player that can be used in a lot of different ways. Joe Jackson, I thought, was solid, 227, 5.8. and 1 score for him. Also had a receiving touchdown in his 6 grabs. So those are 2 guys you can find some balance in the passing game. I think they're both 2 really good backs that could do a whole lot for your team. I look at Gabe Ervin coming over from Nebraska. An interesting ad. Had a very quiet 2024. Did have 2 touchdowns, though. Had a better 2023, 200 yards, 5.2 yards a carry, and 1 score in that season. He's a decent back at 6'2", 222, coming out of Buford High School in Georgia. He's a solid asset here that I think will be good to get him involved in the offense as well. I like this running back room. I think it's a really strong unit, one of probably the best parts of this offense, even if they lose DJ Giddens.
And they move to the wide receiver group. Jace Brown at 6'1", 180. As expected, he emerged as a top pass catcher last year, a guy of great speed to be a vertical threat, was really effective out of the slot. Only 5 touchdowns last year, so I want him to, hit pay dirt a little bit more often, but he can be the clear top guy here. Jerron Tibbs had 300 yards for Purdue last year, saw 100-plus snaps in the slot and out wide, so maybe some underrated versatility from his game. Love the addition of Jerron Bradley, 6'5", 220. He did nothing at Boston College last year, but in the 2 years earlier at Texas Tech, he was pretty darn effective for them. Brings, of course, that great size to the table to be an asset in the red zone, something they've lacked tremendously over the last couple of years. Caleb Medford, 6', 200. He was a quite sound producer in his 2 years at New Mexico. You also have Sterling Lockett, Andre Davis, Jaquise Spradley Demps. Either played a few snaps or none at all last year, the latter being a 3-star in last season's class. And I think Garrett Oakley is one of the more underrated tight ends in the country and will be a very effective player. Braden Lofton had 2 scores early on in the season his first year. This is a good tight end group. I like what they have at pass catcher. Of course, they have a phenomenal true freshman they just got as well. So this is going to be a very good receiving group for Kansas State, Nick, because this is a balanced offense. They're not going to go out there and look to throw it 40 times a game, so they don't need to have overwhelming talent. I think this is just enough.
Yeah, I like what they have here. They're not going to throw the ball a ton. They only threw it 40 times a game once last year. You're really in that 20 to 30 attempts per game. Sweet spot for Avery Johnson here. I think, Brown is a really good asset for him. 823 yards receiving, 17.5 yards per grabs, a really impressive number. 5 touchdowns, 63 yards per game last year. He's going to be a full-time star for this team. Expect him to have a really good season, over 1,000 yards receiving. I certainly expect that out of him. I think Oakley and Lofton are 2 great tight ends. Oakley is a great red zone threat. 5 touchdowns for him, 236 on the season last year. Lofton had 125 and 2 scores. So those are 2 solid tight ends I think you can really rely on and be key cogs in your offense. I think Tibbs is a good add from Purdue, 305 and 2 touchdowns on a bad team. That kind of stands out to me. I think he could be really solid for this team overall. Bradley coming over from Boston College. Didn't do anything really there last year, but he had a great year prior to that at Texas Tech, 4 touchdowns, 12 yards per grab there. A solid player overall, in my opinion. And then you look at Caleb Medford coming over from Mexico, who also had 18.7 yards per grab and 3 scores on 18 grabs last year. He had a decent 2023 as well with 2 scores and 500-plus yards. Love this wide receiver room. I think it's a very solid, deep room. They made some nice moves. Larry Porter Jr., the freshman, or Larry Porter the fourth, that is, the freshman, will be a very key add from the high school ranks as well. Love what this offense can do. I think this is a really good attack here that's got a lot of weapons in this wide receiver room.
Yeah, that tight end I was referring to, the incoming freshman, Lincoln Keir. He's a 5-star top-rated tight end in this class. He's destined to get on the field, Nick, so I think this is a very good tight end room. Like the pass catchers, pretty happy with what they have in terms of skilled positions. Moving to the offensive line, John Pastore, 6'6", 300. You saw 20-plus reps at left tackle in the first 3 games of the year each, only a couple each the rest of the year, but was pretty good. And he'll do fine as a starter this upcoming season. Amos Talali at 6'6", 375. Played about 100 reps last fall for USC. Return a veteran at center and Sam Hecht, who was great in pass protection. Taylor Portier returns to his post at right guard, also being very good, allowing 0 sacks and nearly 700 snaps. I think right tackle, they're going to see a new face in George Fitzpatrick coming over from Ohio State. He's going to contend with redshirt freshman Gus Hawkins. Good offensive line here. Even with some of the new transfers, I think they're going to be just fine. Andrew Winnegang, a veteran who saw extensive action at left guard and right tackle last year, is also in the fold, Nick. So this is a good group. They coach it well. Typically has good size and discipline. So I think that they're going to complement the skilled guys very well.
Yeah, this is a solid group. Nothing crazy that jumps off the screen at you, but I like what they had. I like what they added. Fitzpatrick's a solid add at right tackle. I think he's going to be solid here. The new left side's a completely new look unit, which does worry me a little bit, but I think some of the adds are not bad. Sam Heck at center is a really good veteran there, as is Portier at right guard, and I think they have a couple different depth pieces that are solid. Gus Hawkins can maybe get on the field this year. Like this unit, a sturdy, steady unit in the Big 12.
Now you look at the offensive verdict for this team. I gave them a B+. I think this is a very fair group. The offense is a complex unit to defend due to having a deep, versatile backfield, dual-threat quarterback who's going to continue to grow, a well-coached physical line, and now an upgraded wide receiver group. So what's stopping them, Nick? The passing attack really needs to take that next step, I think is what it is. Johnson needs to find his groove as a pocket passer, and if he does, this will be a tough out, despite not having the deepest, most talent-rich group in terms of face value. B+ here, Nick, but if Johnson plays well, they can approach that A+ tier. I know that might sound crazy because they're not, again, loaded with abundance of talent, but for the scheme they run and for the game they want to play, it's going to match it perfectly.
I think there is plenty of talent here. I really like what this offense can do. I like what they have here. There's some really talented pieces. Avery Johnson, I'm still very high on him, even if there were some deficiencies last year. If he can clean up his game, he'll be a very strong quarterback in this conference. Like the running back room, solid depth there. The wide receiver room has a lot of good depth as well, as long as Johnson can be accurate and make sure that hit the targets and find a way to develop there. A really strong tight end room as well that I think will be really solid for this team. The O-line's a good veteran group as well. I like what we got here. This is a really strong offense. It can certainly be an A unit come the end of the season.
Now I move to the defensive side of the ball. This group was very quality for Kansas State. They returned 5 starters, and of course we're going to start with the defensive line. The defensive end group gets back 2 guys who got on the field a good bit. Chidi Abazor was a quality player at 6'6", 282. He was good versus the run. Travis Bates saw 200-plus snaps. He was below average overall, though. Jordan Allen, a redshirt sophomore, got on the field a little bit. Then you have Cody Stufflebean, who played lots of snaps as a starter. He was pretty underwhelming, though, and he's going to really need to step up as a pass rusher. Toby Azunasanmi, he played 300-plus reps himself. He was also average at best. You have Ryan Davis, 150 snaps to his name. So this group gets good experience back overall. All of them need to find more production, though. Interior defensive line get back a starter in Damian Alayo, who was really good versus around 6'2", 300. Then Uso Siamalo, who was good in rotation, brings a lot of size to the table at 6'3", 333. I think it's a pretty good group here. I think they'll play hard, and production could be scarce, but they won't be a liability at all, Nick, because, again, they play kind of like the offensive line, right? They have discipline. They have some good size, and they're coached the right way, so I don't think they're going to be abysmal, but I think their run defense could potentially struggle in certain areas, and I don't think the pass rush is anything to really be too hype about. Of course, the scheme they run is not going to lead to an abundance of it to begin with, but I think this is a good group.
Yeah, this is a solid group overall. I like what we have here. I think this is a good unit that can find some solid stuff here. Damian Alalo, defensive tackle, 34 tackles for him last year, 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. Solid numbers there. I look at, Toby Asamuni as well, 19 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks. Cody Stufflebeam, 19 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. He needs to improve a little bit. Osbazier, 16 total tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, 3 pass breakups for him. Samano as well, 14 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss. Then Travis Bates had 13 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks. A solid production out of him. This is a good unit here. I like to return a bunch of different guys. They didn't go dive into the portal here. They have a bunch of guys they trust. They like what they have in this 3-3-5 setup here. A good unit I think will be solid and productive this year.
Now you look at the middle of this defense, Austin Romaine. He's a high-level returning starter. He was elite versus the run. He was stable in coverage. Did miss a team-high 20 tackles, though. Desmond Purcell was the most versatile of the bunch. Good versus the run. He was inconsistent in coverage, though, was the main guy who split out wide into the slot. Just brought good production to the table in his career. Asa Newsome and Bayou Palmer both saw about 80 snaps each across 6 games. And Rex Van Wy was pretty good in his near 200 snaps. You also have Gabe Powers arriving from Ohio State after 2 years to play a weak side backer role. I think this is a good group here. Not as much depth as pronounced, but they do have guys who all have snaps to their name in their career. Romaine and Purcell, I think, are going to do a great job leading this group.
Romaine, your top returning tackler, coming back for this team. 96 total tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 2 pass breakups. He's really good. Desmond Ferrell was solid for this team as well. 46 total tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. That's really solid from him as well. I like what he can do there. Rex Van Wy is not a bad player either. 31 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss for him. They bring in a solid add, a guy that has some high upside potential. And Gabe Powers from Ohio State didn't really work out for him. Didn't see the field a whole lot, although he did have a pick 6 last year, 5 total tackles. They're hoping he can find a way to be a key asset at linebacker. I like what this unit can do here. This is a good, solid little room that has some solid pieces.
Now you move to the secondary. This is a team that's going to be replacing their top 2 corners. They're going to turn to Justice James, who played the 3rd most snaps of the corners last fall. So he seems primed to be thrusted into a starting position. He was good versus the run. Was a poor tackler. Wasn't as good as in coverage. Amarian Fortenberry was really good for South Alabama. Sashawn Rich was average in his 100-plus snaps of play. Jaden Rowe, he comes over from Oklahoma, didn't really see the field in his 2 seasons there. VJ Payne has been a solid starter for a couple of years now. Doesn't exactly stand out in one particular area, though. Colby McAllister, he got on the field for 300 snaps. He was an average player. They have Gunnar Maldonado coming over from Arizona. He got hurt after a few games last season. This guy was phenomenal in all regards in 2023, and after being very poor before that. So he has really elevated his game to the next level and has shown great progression. Some established depth on the two deep, I think, overall for this cornerback or the defensive back group as a whole. Jack Fabris played nearly 300 snaps. He was good versus the run, and then Wesley Fair, redshirt sophomore, got only a few snaps last year. And then I got a guy from West Georgia named Q Moss. So this is secondary, Nick. They typically play well in this 3-3-5. They limit opponents to, quite weak efficiency. They never get burned. I think this is a good secondary top to bottom. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I like the secondary. This is a solid room. It's probably the weakest part of this defense, but I still think it's a decent enough unit overall. VJ Payne, 64 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 2 picks, 4 pass breakups last year for him. He was solid. Jack Fairbus was a good tackler, 26 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, a pick, and a pass breakup for him. He was not bad. Colby McAllister, 24 total tackles and a pass breakup for him. Zyson Rich was a true freshman last year. He saw some snaps, though. 12 total tackles, 3 pass breakups as a true freshman was not a bad number from him. You look at the guys they added of the portal, they're not terrible players. Gunnar Maldonado coming over from Arizona. He had a really good 2023, 81 total tackles and 2 picks in that season. Didn't do a whole lot last year, but they still think he could potentially be part of it. Fortenberry coming over from South Alabama. He's a really good ad. 45 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 2 picks, 7 pass breakups from the group of 5 level. He was great as a true freshman for them. I think that's a really underrated ad. Could be a great ad come the end of the season. Jaden Rowe comes over from Oklahoma. He didn't really play for them, but that's an interesting ad nonetheless. Overall, I like this defense and I like this secondary. It's a little bit of a weaker cornerback room, but I think Fortenberry was a really good ad from South Alabama.
I look at the defensive verdict. I give them a B. The Wildcats always field a quality defense, and that'll be the case once again. I think they have good depth and experience across the board, especially in that front 6. Biggest concern is a consistent pass rush and new corners stepping into starting roles. Pass defense has had some tough outings, and the run defense never got gashed, but could certainly benefit from improvement to really contend as the clear favorite in the Big 12. This team last year, Nick, they didn't lose because of the defense. The offense is what costed them pretty much every game. And then in 2023, the defense didn't play very well in their losses. This is a team over the last couple of years, they typically give up about 21 to 23 points per game. We need to start entering the teens, I think, to really start to reach elite status and to be a legitimate threat to potentially make a playoff run. Don't think that's going to happen this year, but this will be a quality group that's going to give you good play on a weekly basis.
I agree with you there. 23.4 points per game is probably not going to get you in the college football playoff or win you a Big 12 title, but this will get this team in contention. I like this defense. I think the defensive line has some solid depth on, rotation-wise. I like what they have at linebacker. I think it's a decent unit, bringing back their top tackler. The cornerback room and the safety unit is solid. The cornerback's, a little bit weaker, but I think they added a great player that I've sung the praises of from South Alabama and Fortenberry, who I think could be a really key asset for this team. I like what they added and some of the other pieces as well. Maldonado and Powers are not bad adds out of the portal. This is a defense I think will be solid this year. They got to find a way to improve. They got to keep themselves in better contests here, but I do think this is still a B unit. They got some solid pieces here. I'm just waiting to see if they can put it all together this year.
Now I move to the schedule and the prediction. Wildcats will be tough to beat with a quite simple schedule that starts in Dublin with this rushing attack and the offensive line. They're going to have an upper hand in most games. Defense will be good, but finding that pass rush and avoiding a fall off in the secondary again are the biggest concerns. If they do fine in those areas and Johnson takes the next step, this team's going to be deadly in the college football playoff, Nick. I'll see you in December because that's where they will be playing for some marbles. Really good team here. I pick them to lose to Kansas, Utah, and Baylor. All road games. Again, that game against Arizona State is a non-conference slate. I think they're going to cover week 1 against Iowa State. You didn't pick them to lose to Kansas. I think that last year was a very odd game for them at home. They really struggled with the Jayhawks, and I think going on the road this year, it's going to be a trap game for them. It's a slip up for me. So 10-2 is certainly very viable. I'm going to stick with 9-3 though, and just not fully copy the same results from you, Nick. So a little bit off, but not by much. This team will definitely be competing in the Big 12 though.
Yeah, I changed up a little bit here. I think they will lose to Baylor on October 4th. I'm pretty high on that Baylor team. I think they'll lose to TCU on October 11th. That's my other loss for this team. Outside of that, I think this is a really strong team that's playing, a pretty weak schedule by all things considered here. Awesome that they're playing week 0, right? That's your headliner for week 0 out in Dublin against Iowa State. A very intriguing matchup. I think Kansas State has a really strong upper edge in that. The book's, line's like 3.5 right now. I like Kansas State to cover that pretty convincingly. I think they'll be really strong on the ground in that matchup at the Aviva Stadium over there in Ireland. A very interesting matchup. They also play Army non-conference. Kind of funny. They're playing Army. Very interesting matchup there. And Arizona is a non-conference game as well due to some weird scheduling things. Outside of that, though, I like what they have here. I think they'll be strong on the road as well. I think they'll find a way to win some of those road games you have them losing. I like the coaching here. I think Kleiman's a phenomenal coach. He was, at North Dakota State. He went to 5 straight national title games, winning 4 of those 5, just turning that team into an absolute dynasty, continuing the success that North Dakota State had been doing for a while. He took the Kansas State job. Won 2 straight bowl games and 2 straight 9-win seasons is a pretty impressive mark, plus a 10-win season in 2022. That was pretty good for this team. So they're a consistent, 9-win team right now. I think they get back to that 10-win mark again this year. I like what they have on offense. I think Avery Johnson's a really good quarterback. I like the running back room. I think the pass catching group is a solid unit overall. The defense is where I'm concerned again with this team, but I think they'll find a way to be a little bit better this year, get some more balance, and be a bit stronger. That could certainly help out this team in the long run. I like this Kansas State team. They could certainly find themselves in the conference title game. I think I'm going to have them missing out just on a tiebreaker, but they're going to be in contention come the end of the season. They'll be fighting to try and win this conference and get a spot in the college football playoff.
That's it for today's episode. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.